Bird! Get him! Yeah! Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. All right, it is October 9th. I know, midweek, so what? That's just the way it goes. It's hunting season. There's things to do. There's ducks to shoot. There's birds to chase. And there's places to go. And when you go, you go with Onyx, the title sponsor of this show. I go with Onyx everywhere. So do you. Gunner Kennels, they're in my truck. W Supply is on my speed dial. In case I needed something from Garmin, can't call Garmin, but I can call W and I can get it. But the thing is about Garmin, I never have any. I've got one of my TT25 collars, and one of my dogs was kenneled with another dog of my own, of my own doing, and it used the antenna like a chew toy. Now it didn't cut through the antenna, but it used it like a chew toy. I don't know how long it took the dog to do it, and that thing still works. I don't even have to call W for an antenna right now, but I did find an old collar of mine, and I'm going to call them and see if they got a charger for that. I like to keep one of my Garmin collars in the truck. I'm kind of known for getting lost. And when I start doing some grouse hunting here in the woods in Michigan, and if it ain't sunny out, well, you might as well just call me Wrong Way Feldman. I have to keep an extra collar in my truck. So I look at dog 3. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's dog 3, parked where I thought I did, or parked where I didn't think I did. But it'll get you by. It'll get you by if you're one of those people that just don't have that great sense of direction. There's my hack. You have an extra collar, and you leave it in your truck, and you mark it dog 3. That's all. Canine athlete, I've got a new supply of wilderness athlete coming for me. I still have plenty of Hydrate and Recover, New Dog, and Canine Pro. Of course, I keep a stockpile of that, and I give it to events, and I give it to friends, and I'm like the Johnny Appleseed of that. It's that season. If you treat yourself to any kind of vitamin, any kind of hydrate, any kind of, the popular ones, anything you see, if you do that to yourself, do that for your dog. Your dog could use that little extra boost just like you can. I'm drinking a wilderness athlete right now. I'm going to be taking the 940A. I'm sorry. No, I take that back. This is the Mossberg part of it, okay? My SA20. I'll be using my SA20 on the 18th of October. I've got a good friend of mine that's been on the show a couple times, and him and his son's friend, we go out for the duck opener in this zone in Michigan, and that opens on the 18th of October. And I'll be putting that Mossberg and Boss's new 3.5 coppers to the test. Let me tell you about the 3.5 coppers. I took them to I picked them up on my way to North Dakota, and I was shooting my 16 gauge, so I had some Boss Legacy left. But two of my friends came there without any non-toxins. I told them, I'll have some Boss for you. They were shooting the 3.5s. Not a problem. You might think, I'd like to have more BBs. You know what? You got to aim at the bird. You hit the bird. And if you hit a sharp tail with a 3 or a 5, if you hit them with a 3 and a 5, they're stone cold dead. We didn't lose any birds. We didn't have any ridiculously wounded birds. The 3.5s in copper, I'm going to be using them for duck hunting for sure. But I'm telling you, nothing wrong with upland. Now, I'm going to be grouse hunting this weekend. I'll be honest with you. I'll be shooting my old Legacy number 7s. Because grouse hunting, yes, if I hit a grouse with one of those 3s or 5s, of course it's going to go down. It's going to be dead. But when you got grouse flying through a forest, trust me, you need about 300 or 400 pellets flying at it. In that case, I'm going to Legacy. And I'm sorry I can't share that old Legacy stuff with you. It's not around anymore. But Boss has come through for us once again, just like Purina. Purina comes through for habitat, for dog clubs, for show rings, for you, for me. They come through for everything because they are invested in what we do. They don't just make dog food. Anybody could just make dog food. A friend of mine just feeds her dogs chicken legs, okay? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to Purina, who's been making my dog's food since before my grandfather jumped off a ship in New York Harbor. And that's a true story. I'll probably talk about it someday. He was a German merchant marine. Marshwear, I am wearing right now, this is embarrassing. I got a pair of Smart Wool socks on, but I've got a pair of Marsh pants, Marsh boxer briefs, and a Marsh Tech hoodie. And it was a little chilly this morning, and I got my Marsh puffy jacket on. As always, I'm a walking billboard for Marsh. I got my Arxis boots out because Saturday morning, it's dewy out here. We're getting that typical fall. The woods and what's left of the ferns, it's going to be wet out there, and I am going to be using my Arxis boots. Which, if you didn't know, Arxis USA boots include insulated and uninsulated styles, okay? 3, 4, 5 milligrams or millimeters of neoprene. And if you're getting old like me, just check out the Arxis boots with the zippers. Slip them on, slip them off. It's like a slipper. It is. No more battling the boot at the end of the day. Just unzip and strip. Also, I forgot to tell you, Arxis, there's a new wide calf boot. Okay, wide calf. Now, I wouldn't say I have wide calves. Now, if you ever see me in a pair of shorts, I've got defined calves. So I think mine fit okay. But I got some friends, and they are not giant people, but they got wide calves. They're just more calf than, I don't know. They're just calf heavy. And they even have a wide calf boot available. I don't know what else you could do. I mean, I'm heading down to Watermark Brewery as soon as I get the go-ahead, and I will be down there picking up some Oktoberfest. Now, I have to admit, when my barrel's out, I'm subject to the liquor store for what I'm going to drink. But when my barrel's full, this kennel is full of Watermark Brewery beer, and it's going to be their Oktoberfest this time. I cannot wait for it. I'm going to have a little celebration. We're going to have when my friends come back from their Dakota trip, we're going to have what we call a euchre game in here, and I'm going to have a fresh barrel of Watermark Brewery. And did I tell you it's like at exit 22 off of I-94 in Michigan? Right, okay, 22 miles north. So if you're coming up from Indiana or Illinois to try to chase some of our woodcock and grouse, or you're coming up from Ohio and you're going to come up the lake shore, take a little doing, but you could get 94 to there. Get off at exit 22. Or if you don't have time to go to the brewery because you're like me and you get to the brewery and you find out, they got a courtyard and you can smoke a cigar outside and you're going to blow off a day of hunting just to sit in a tavern like I've been known to do, you can go to any of the convenience stores and gas stations in that general area, southeast Michigan or southwest Michigan, and you should be able to find some Watermark Brewery to take to your bird camp. Now, if that don't just beat all, that's it. Boy, that was rude. I'm sorry. But I'm not going to re-edit this and cut this because it's a lot of work. You're going to love this episode. You're going to want to listen to this episode twice. And you can thank one of our fellow listeners, Mark Stitzen. He led the charge on this. He found the snake antivenom manufacturing guru named Josh.lizer, and we did an episode, and it's a deep dive, and you will love every minute of this episode because, I don't think about snakes very often, but I've been in snake country, and I wouldn't know what to do. I do know what to do now, and I know what not to do. So thanks, Mark, for hooking us up, and thank you to all of our sponsors, and thank you to all of our listeners, and thank you to all of our patrons. They are my oldest and largest sponsor. They really keep this show on the road, so to speak, on the air. Other sponsors, you've heard them come and go, different gun manufacturers, different supplement companies, different ammunition companies back in it. It's actually never been a different food company, but that's because I've never changed foods. But my Patreon patrons are my core group. They like the Zoom rooms. They like the extra content. I send them messages. I send them pictures. They get videos from time to time. And they have access to me. I talk to more patrons in a month than I talk to just listeners. And whether it's a question about testing your dog, breeding your dog, finding a dog, I am there for. If you're a patron, you get my phone number. I'm not saying regular old listeners can't get my phone number. They write me and I talk to them. But a patron gets preferential treatment. Preferential patronic treatment. Is that I don't know if that's a thing or not. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this episode and listen to it twice. It's going to go by like a blink of an eye because it is a deep dive into antivenom, vaccines, critical care, first aid, all revolved around snakes in North America. All right, how's that? I told you it was going to be a good episode. Hey, everybody. I have what I think is a very exciting episode. I have John Lizer on the phone or on a Zoom call with me, and he is the Chief Scientific Officer for MG Biologics. And we're not talking about flea and tick prevention here. This one is about antivenom and snake bites. And Josh, if you want to throw in a few more accolades or acronyms in front of your name, let everybody know where you're at and who you're at or where you're at.
Okay,
But just give us the lecture. We need to hear the real thing.
sure. Yeah. So thank you for that brief introduction. I've been in the animal health industry for a little over 21 years now, and I'm a veterinary microbiologist. And my company, it's not my company, but the company where I preside over the science program at this company, we manufacture veterinary antivenom for horses, dogs, and cats, as well as many other antibody products too. But today we're just talking about snake bites. So that's all we're going to talk about. Um, so going back to what I just said, we manufacture Rattler antivenom. That's the brand of it, Rattler. It's sold through veterinarians only, so none of your listenership is really going to be able to procure it themselves.
Right.
Um, and it is USDA licensed for horses, dogs, and cats. And it treats all venomous North American snakes except for coral snake. And we're going to go through that in a little bit here.
Okay.
And then I also volunteer my time for a nonprofit group called National Snakebite Support. And that's a reference that I'll share with you guys, or a resource I'll share with you guys a little later on. And that is a group that provides education and advocacy for proper snakebite treatment based on evidence-based methods, because you would not believe how many doctors and veterinarians do not actually treat snake bites the proper way. So we're going to have a great chat today, and I've got a ton of super valuable resources to share with your listeners. Um, the truth is I could talk about envenomations all day, but we are going to have to pace ourselves here. So, um, first, let's talk about different types of venomous snakes in North America. So, we have primarily two families or subfamilies of venomous snakes. The first one is the subfamily Crotalinae, and they're called the pit vipers. And they're called pit vipers because they have a heat sensing pit organ between their eye and the nose on both sides of their head. And that kind of alerts them that there is something nearby. Hopefully, it's prey, because then that's how they know that there's prey nearby and they're going to attack that so they can eat it. In the family of Crotalinae, aka pit vipers, we've got Crotalus species, or the Crotalus genera, I should say, which includes your rattlesnakes. And then there's a second genus, which is a Echistrodon, and Echistrodon includes your water moccasins and copperheads. Water moccasins, aka cottonmouths, and copperheads do not have rattles, so they don't make any kind of rattle sound when you approach them, which not all rattlesnakes do either, but they are venomous. And then there's a second family of venomous snakes in North America called the Elapidae. And so in family Elapidae, we have the coral snake. And coral snakes are very, very pretty snakes. There is kind of a mnemonic device about red on yellow, kill a fellow, something like that. Forget that even exists. It's not right. Do not use it, please. If you see a snake that looks like it could be a coral snake, just leave it the hell alone. Coral snake venom is neurologic. It will mess you up. It's arguably probably the most deadly venom. Um, but because they are such small snakes, they usually can't hit you with a super big load of it. Um, but just don't follow any mnemonic devices that might suggest whether a snake is venomous or not. And by the way, I keep saying venomous and not poisonous. And this is a little bit of semantics here.
Mhm.
But if something bites you and it kills you or hurts you, it's venomous. If you bite it and it kills you or it hurts you, it's poisonous.
Oh,
So that's
never even thought of that.
That's the difference between poisonous and venomous. So if you pick up like a toad and the toad is poisonous, just by touching the toad, you get poisoned. That is poisonous. But if the toad were to bite you and inject something into you, that's venomous. That's the difference. So snakes are venomous, they're not poisonous, just as a little FYI.
Yeah.
It's kind of splitting hairs if you want to um, get real picky or pedantic about it. So venomous snakes, believe it or not, are actually found in every state except Alaska, Hawaii, and Maine. And there might be one or two other states out on the East Coast. So I live in the Midwest. I live in Iowa, ironically, where I'm going to say we, for all intents and purposes, we functionally don't have venomous snakes here, but um, some parts of the state you could encounter a very rare prairie rattler.
Hmm.
Um, so within our venomous snakes, we do have two main types of venom. There is hemotoxic venom and there's neurotoxic venom. So hemotoxic venom is going to be found in most of your rattlesnakes, your water moccasins, and your copperheads. Hemotoxic because it um, causes issues with your blood and your tissues. It sometimes it can cause blood to coagulate. Sometimes it can cause your blood to anticoagulate and actually act as a blood thinner. There's actually another type of predominant snake venom that is neurotoxic. And neurotoxic is the really bad one because, as you might guess, it messes with your neurologic system.
Right.
And our neurologic system's kind of important to us to function properly and, I don't know, live.
Right.
So your neurotoxic venoms are going to be timber rattlers. They're bad dudes. Um, and snake enthusiasts would actually hate that I say that, so I shouldn't call the snakes bad, but timber rattlers can be they can have a pretty nasty venom if you get hit by one. And there was just a hiker, I think in Tennessee, not too long ago, that saw a timber rattler and he thought it was injured or something, so he picked it up and it bit him. And he was far away from help and he died. So
Jeez.
yeah, that is avoidable. Don't do that. I don't want to make light of it, but at the same time, just leave rattlesnakes alone if you see them. So neurotoxic, timber rattler, Mojave type A, Mojave rattlesnake found in California, Southern California. Um, Coral snakes are neurotoxic, but they're not in the Crotalinae family, as I was talking about earlier. And then here's a little bit of an interesting one. There's the Southern Pacific rattlesnake, but which is also found in Southern California. But that snake's venom toxicity varies based on its geographic location. So Southern Pacifics are a hemotoxic venom, but if you're in the Idlewild Mountain Range region of California, the Southern Pacific rattlesnake's venom tends to be neurotoxic.
Wow.
So it's there is geographic variation to their venom, and it's kind of interesting. A lot of the venom composition is dependent on what the snake's predominant prey is. So are they having to take down crickets and bugs, or having to take down um, smaller mammals like mice, or bigger mammals like an occasional squirrel or
Right.
a rat or something like that. So we've kind of gone through the basics. These are the snakes we have in the US. What types of venom do they have? But then what happens in a snake bite? So at the to its core, it's quite simple. A snake bites you. They have these fangs, and their fangs are hollow that are ducted to their venom gland. And I'm pointing to my face, but your listeners can't really see that. But they've got a large venom gland in their head that stores all this venom. And that has a channel, a little tube, if you will, that goes straight to their fangs. And their fangs have a little hole at the end. And their fangs are literally like little needles. And they bite your skin, they penetrate your skin. Obviously, they go into the tissue, and then they inject venom directly into your tissue. So there is a difference between warning bites and kill bites that snake will give. Snakes want to preserve their venom because that's what they used to eat. So a snake is going to look at you as a human, and they're going to know you're way too big to be their prey. So or your dog for that matter. So they would prefer to not have to dump their entire load of venom into you because how are they going to eat later that day? So they are probably going to try to give a defensive bite or a warning bite, in which they're only going to try to dump a little bit of venom in you so they can preserve it. However, if you had a dog that's being real antagonistic and that snake is really in danger, or it's a really big snake that just holds a lot of venom, your dog might take a really big hit and he could get a ton of venom. Eastern Diamondbacks, they're really big snakes. They hold a ton of venom. If you get hit by an Eastern Diamondback, you just probably got injected by a ton of venom, and their venom is kind of nasty too. So those are pretty serious bites. Let's go over a myth.
Yeah, please.
A common myth that, and everyone says this, it's not true. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Younger snakes are more dangerous because they can't control their venom and therefore they inject you with more venom. It's so wrong. Younger snakes are small and they have small venom glands and they cannot hold or make as much venom as an adult snake. So they are not going to inject you with more venom because they don't have that control. They do have that control. A younger snake's venom might be slightly more potent by virtue of not being able to inject as much venom. So they have to get more with less. But also consider a younger snake's diet is primarily going to consist of small insects and crickets and whatnot. So
Right.
they're not having to kill small mammals like mice and whatnot yet. So all your listeners can now know that anytime they see that on the Facebook, it's not true.
Yeah. I've only heard that 100 times.
Yeah, and now granted, most times if it's on Facebook, it's got to be true, right? But in this one case, it's not. And that was sarcasm, and sometimes sarcasm doesn't go through, but I hope everyone understands that as sarcasm. So this is obviously a hunting dog podcast. Everyone's out in the bush with their dog, and their dogs are running all over trying to find game, retrieve game, whatnot. There's a high probability that they're going to come across venomous snakes. So what happens? What do you do if your dog is bit? So a snake bite from a venomous snake is a medical emergency. You never want to sustain a snake bite and be like, we'll deal with that in a little bit or we'll deal with that tomorrow. If your dog gets bit, your hunt is over. You're going to try to get it to the nearest veterinarian you can. Distance yourself from the snake. Find a safe place to call for help. And most importantly, do not attempt to kill, capture, or otherwise dispatch the snake. You can imagine how that could go wrong.
Yeah.
And then interesting to note, even the snake's head can still remain venomous for a period of time, and the record, I think, has been up to several hours. So they can still contain active venom and actually secrete that venom involuntarily. for 15 or 30 minutes after they've been killed, and sometimes up to several hours.
And I'm sure at some
So
point somebody's thought of that. I remember somebody would say, if you can get the snake, bring it with for identification, but that's not a good idea.
it's almost the world's
Worst
worst idea.
idea.
You don't need to do it. And partly is because the antivenom that either we make or the other company who makes a veterinary antivenom, our antivenom provides coverage for all North American venomous snakes except the coral snake. So unless your dog was bit by a coral snake, which is not super common, you don't need to know the snake because the veterinarian is going to run a diagnostic and see if there's evidence of snake bite in your hematology or your in your hematology. And if they see that you've got some pathology of a snake bite, they're going to treat it. The antivenom treats everything, so it doesn't matter what kind of snake you were bit by.
That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can take a picture if you can do it quickly and safely, but like I just said, it's not necessary for treatment. Now, for treatment in the field, you're kind of helpless. There's absolutely nothing you can do to help your dog until you get to the vet, because the only thing that neutralizes venom is antivenom. And then you're going to say, well, of course you would say that you make antivenom, but it's true. Um, their venom is a toxic mixture of many, many different proteins that are all toxins, and there is not a single drug that neutralizes or addresses all those toxins. There are a couple up and coming drugs like mirimistat and vrasplodib that target very specific toxins in the snake venom, but they're still in clinical trials and being researched. But I do think they have a lot of potential to improve the treatment prognosis of snake bites in the future, but that time is not here yet. So truly, the only thing you can give your dog that neutralizes venom is antivenom. And don't let me forget to talk about how we make antivenom, because that's kind of cool too.
Yeah.
So
Well, Josh, real quick, we said in our pre-chat,
yeah,
um, we should, not that we want to get any of the pharmaceutical companies upset, but Benadryl is not and never should be. Explain that to the listeners how
sure.
it's a histamine and it has nothing to do with the snake bite.
Yeah, so there's a few things I want to talk about that you should not do in the event of a snake bite, and giving Benadryl is one of them. It's widely propagated on the internet um, because everyone associates it with a bite. You've got swelling, you're having an allergic reaction, get
Right.
Benadryl.
Right.
So Benadryl is absolutely useless against snake venom because Benadryl, aka diphenhydramine, is an antihistamine. And snake venom does not contain histamine.
Okay. I can get that with my high school education.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
there is no histamine in snake venom. Now, if you are having an allergic reaction to snake venom, it's not very common, but it can happen. In that case, your body is causing degranulation of certain immune cells. That's the most scientific I'll get today, I promise. And that releases a bunch of histamine. And so in that case, you could possibly take Benadryl, but that's very rare and it doesn't happen very often.
And that
Um,
diagnosis would almost be impossible to make in the field, wouldn't it? The
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So other things you want to do, or stop. Other things you do not want to do if your dog is bit: do not suck, do not cut, do not apply a tourniquet, do not use those stupid things you can buy that are supposed to suck out the venom. Um, do not apply electric current to it. Electric current just makes proteins migrate, by the way. It's not going to kill them. It's probably going to drive them deeper into tissue. because proteins have a charge themselves, and they're going to want to migrate away from a charge that's the same charge that they have. It's
Hmm.
electrical repulsion. So avoid all those things. When I say there's truly nothing you can do when your dog is bit, except get it to the vet, that's what it means. There truly is nothing you can do. And if you read it online, especially, it's probably wrong, or wrong if you read it on Facebook or whatnot. So, um, we already said don't get Benadryl, don't give any kind of steroid, don't even give antibiotics. Snake venom has antimicrobial peptides in it. Snake venom actually is antibacterial within itself. Your chance of getting an infection from a snake bite is less than 5%.
Wow.
Very few snake bites actually become infected unless that injury becomes necrotic, in which case antibiotics would be warranted. But we're trying to be good stewards of antibiotics because we get antibiotic resistance, of course. So we're trying to reduce the amount of antibiotics we're putting in ourselves and our pets. So in a snake bite, the uh, the evidence is not there that it's needed because most bites just do not get infected, partly because of the properties of the venom.
So the dog and the cat bite on a dog and the cat are much more a chance of needing an antibiotic and then the snake for sure.
Correct. Yeah, like if a dog were to bite another dog or something like
Right.
that.
Now you've got a warranted cause for that.
Right. Yeah. Or if some other animal attacks
Right.
and bites your dog, but that animal in this case is not a snake. So if your dog gets bit, you need to get your dog to the vet ASAP. There's an adage with envenomation, time is tissue. The longer it takes to get the venom treated and under control, the more damage it's doing inside your body or your dog's body. The sooner antivenom therapy is started, the less damage you're going to have. Antivenom cannot um, stop existing damage or reverse existing damage, but it can prevent new damage happening within your body. And it's important to realize that most snake bites are actually not going to be fatal in your dog. But they are still extremely painful and they can be very debilitating with lingering effects, and they can potentially cause organ damage or kind of systemic wide damage. And some dogs may just not be the same after sustaining a really nasty bite. So the dog should be treated. There's there are a lot of people that believe, oh, it was a copperhead, their bites aren't that bad. I've had dogs bit by copperheads before and they still lived. Well, yeah, because most dogs will live, but at what cost? It's inhumane, it's painful. Um, and by the way, I talk to many people who are treating snake bites, and there are still dogs that die. Even with antivenom, there are still dogs that die, especially if it took that dog too long to get there, or the body was just sustaining such severe shock that there's just no coming back from that.
Josh, could I ask a question? And maybe it's not the right
Yeah,
answer, but um, say a dog gets bit, whether it's in the muzzle or the leg or the shoulder. Um, I mean, and again, you kind of went back to that size of the snake where I could see a very small snake. It would almost be hard for him to bite, let's say the on the rib cage. He can a snake open their mouth so much that it really doesn't matter what the target is, or because you mentioned
they
how
can.
they can still open their
They
mouth
can.
for that.
Yeah, they can open their mouth quite wide. The most common bites on a dog are going to be in the face
Okay.
because the dog has their head down to look at it, or they're going to be in the leg or the foot because the dog is running by and suspecting and the snake bit it. Um, Bites to areas with a lot of soft tissue, like in the chest or something, a lot of muscle. Um, those bites are going to be really bad because there's a lot of soft tissue there for the venom to just do its
Oh,
thing on,
wow.
and you can get some really bad tissue necrosis in those areas. So
And then
one thing,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
that means necrosis means the tissue dying, correct? Is that
Yes, yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's dying, it's been killed. And once you're later on in the treatment phase, it's going to slough off and it's going to look really nasty. And that's where you're going to be working with your veterinarian to provide the right proper wound care
Yeah.
to get that healed back up properly. And in that case, it then can become infected. So
Yeah.
antibiotics would be warranted in that case. But you're post envenomation at that
Right.
point, you're in the healing phase and you're
Right.
dealing with tissue in an open wound. Man, there was another point I wanted to say earlier, and I totally forgot what it was, but maybe it will come to me later.
That's fine.
So
I probably need to just hold my questions, but sometimes I get a little excited.
that's completely okay. We're just having a conversation here.
Right. Right.
Clinical signs of bite. If your dog gets bit, look for bite marks. You might see two little bite marks. There might be a little bit of blood present on them. Maybe a little blood drip comes out. So there may be bite marks present. Hallmarks of envenomation, they're going to have swelling. They're going to have pain. Take the collar off. That's what I wanted to say earlier. If especially if they get bit on the face or the neck because of swelling, you don't want their neck to swell up and their collar becomes constrictive.
Oh yeah, especially with
So,
e-collars that most people use on their dogs while hunting. The ID collar is almost always loose, but to your point, we're always taught to cinch that e-collar or that, transmitter
right.
collar right up tight,
Yeah,
right up tight. Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point.
yeah. So take the collar off. Admittedly, it can be a little difficult if you need to keep your dog on a leash or something, because a lot of times when dogs get bit, they're not just laying there on the ground. They're still running around and doing things that dogs do. They're
Right.
just now hating their life a lot more than they were 5 minutes ago.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess in that situation, you got to do what you got to do to keep your dog contained and with you, but just be aware that it is recommended to keep the collar off. Um, Once you get to the hospital, it's recommended to keep bites elevated and the bite area is elevated, but that's human
Not
application. It's really hard to do that with an animal.
right, right. Yeah,
Yeah. So, um, let's talk about veterinary treatment and what happens to your dog after they've been bit.
yeah.
So, emergency veterinary clinics generally treat snake bites the best and the most correct. General practice clinics may or may not have antivenom on hand, and nothing against the general practice clinics, but they also may or may not treat snake bites properly. So we have a lot of people coming on to the National Snakebite Support Facebook group saying, help, my dog got bit. I called the vet and the vet said, give it Benadryl and bring it in tomorrow. I hope by now all your listeners would be saying, no, 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 it's not what you're supposed to
Right.
do. And if that's the case, then you should go find a different vet or go to an emergency vet that can get your dog treated properly. Especially if you have a high pedigree, well-trained, very expensive hunting dog. You need to get it the best standard of care you can as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Going through my notes, make sure I didn't forget something. Okay, yeah. So we were talking about veterinary treatment. Um, Second point, here's another great resource for your listeners and you. My company, we actually run a veterinary antivenom locator. It's a website. It's called veterinarysnakebite911.com. And if you go to that website, you can type in your zip code and it will show you vet clinics nearby that all stock antivenom. And then you don't have to be calling every vet clinic in the area to find if they call antivenom.
That's great.
Um, that tells you where. And then veterinarysnakebite911.com also has a lot of the same information I'm sharing today, the do's and don'ts of snake envenomation. Don't get Benadryl, all that good jazz.
Yeah. No tourniquet,
Uh,
no cutting, no bleeding, no get.
Yeah. So don't pee on it. That's a thing. People say pee on it. I maybe they're just trying to justify a weird kink or something. I don't know, but don't. Baking soda is another one, milk, cattle prod.
Really,
If it,
there's a couple I haven't heard of, but nothing would surprise.
yeah,
Yeah,
if it sounds ridiculous, it's probably because it is.
yeah.
Just don't do it. So, veterinary treatment, they will initially run diagnostic tests to determine if there are or if there is ongoing pathology of a bite. They're going to look at clotting times. They're going to look to see if your dog's blood cells are undergoing destruction. Um, they're going to be looking at kidney values and other blood values. And sometimes bites are dry bites and there's no venom injected. That happens anywhere from 10% to maybe a quarter of the time. If you truly do get a dry bite, you're lucky. Sometimes vets will say it's a dry bite, but if you still have swelling in that area, if your dog has swelling in that area, it's not a dry bite
Okay.
because the venom is causing the swelling. And the swelling is caused by edema. There's fluid coming out of the tissues because the venom is blowing the cells apart. It's making the cells really leaky. It does that because it's designed to kill and help digest the tissue. So if you have swelling or pain, it's not a dry bite. And the vet's diagnostics could say, well, there's nothing going on. It's like, I understand that, but the tissue is still reacting to the venom. So there
Right.
was some venom. 100% of bites don't necessarily require antivenom. And I say that with a caveat. If it's a very, very minor bite in which the dog truly is not swelling much, it might not warrant antivenom because there can be effects to receiving antivenom, and I'll talk about those in a minute.
Yeah.
In that case, the risk may not be worth the reward. But snake bites are also dynamic, and you need to monitor them for at least 8 hours because it might appear like a nothing burger. And then you look at that 2 hours from now, and it's a lot more swollen. That
Mhm.
dog is now limping. So if you can get to about 8 hours at least, and there's still no swelling, dog's acting completely fine, it probably was a dry bite. However, during this time, you should keep your dog at the hospital for observation. Because if something starts going south on that dog, you want it to be there so they can get antivenom in it as soon as possible.
Right.
They don't just necessarily want to give antivenom if they don't have to, because the stuff's expensive and there is a risk, and you're gonna rack up a bill. So when they're treating your dog, they're probably going to give it some IV fluids. Sometimes what snake bites will cause is they might lower your blood volume or your blood pressure, and they'll give you fluids to help get those stabilized. They're going to give it some pain medication. Hopefully, it's an opioid. And then hopefully they give an antivenom. And that antivenom is going to come from one of two people. It's going to come from me, or it's going to come from another company in California that makes it. But there's only two companies in the US that make veterinary antivenom. And our product is called Rattler, and it comes in a bag. And the other product comes in a little vial. The Well, before I go on to the next point, it may require multiple doses of antivenom as well.
Wow.
So now you're going to say, what's the dose of antivenom cost?
Right.
So I can't tell you what we sell it to the vets for, but I can tell you what the vets will charge. And they are charging anywhere from $500 to $1,000 per vial or per dose of antivenom. I would say the average is probably around $700 per dose. Um, and they are marking it up. There are some hospitals, like the University of Florida is one of the premier snakebite treatment hospitals in the country. They are there in the best interest of the dog. They're only marking their antivenom up about $15 over what they're paying for it.
Wow.
And that's really just to cover the minimum handling and everything they have to do.
Yeah.
So they're not trying to make money on their antivenom. They're trying to save your dog. But they are also very aggressive with their antivenom therapy, and it's not uncommon for severe snake bites at University of Florida to receive 20 to 40 vials of antivenom at several $100 a piece. So an average cost of treating an envenomation for a dog can run anywhere from $1,500 to $20,000. I've
Oh,
actually seen invoices from customers where they've paid $30,000 to treat their dog. Right now, I'm talking with a person who is trying to get their dog sorted out after a snake bite. They're $18,000 and plus into it. When I last talked to them, they had $18,000 so far. Um, so it can get very expensive.
hmm.
But that's also why you want to kind of make sure your vet's not throwing a bunch of things at it that it doesn't need, which I'm going to get into here real quick. Finally, for the vet care, plan for your dog to stay overnight at a minimum. Might require a couple days. Your vet is not going to stop treating that animal until they get it stabilized, until they see no more signs of hemolysis or the dog's clotting times have stabilized and they're normal again. They're going to be looking for some kind of diagnostic indicator that there's still not indications of active venom. So do not let your vet give Benadryl because we already said it does nothing. One caveat, some vets do pre-treat the dog with Benadryl because they want to try to minimize the chance of a reaction with the antivenom. Because if your dog has a reaction to the antivenom, that is an allergic response, and you will get histamine release in that. That being said, pre-treatment isn't generally recommended because it's really not that helpful. And Benadryl is not great. Benadryl or diphenhydramine, as I really should be calling it, really actually isn't that great for responding to adverse events anyways, because it's still slow. It takes a while to respond. And epinephrine is faster acting and it's going to do a better job of controlling that. Getting a little bit ahead of myself because I'm going to talk about adverse events here pretty quick. But at first, I want to talk about what should not be given or what's contraindicated when treating a snake bite. So I already said Benadryl, NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs should be avoided. Um, Corticosteroids, antibiotics, and then subcutaneous fluids. All those should be avoided. So, um, why do we avoid non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs? Think about your ibuprofen. If they give your dog something like Arprofen or something like that, that's an NSAID, um, or meloxicam. They can increase bleeding tendencies, and bleeding risks are already increased due to the venom effects. So, NSAIDs can also cause significant kidney injury, and your dog may already be sustaining kidney injury from the venom. Corticosteroids, aka steroids, include your dexamethasone and prednisone. They increase the risk of delayed healing and gastric ulceration and perforation. When combined with NSAIDs, steroids also increase the risk of septic peritonitis and potentially fatal GI bleeds is even higher.
Wow.
Vets like to give steroids though because they think it controls the swelling. But the swelling in this case is caused by edema, fluid leakage, um, from damaged tissue. It's not caused by inflammation. Inflammation is a different type of response. It's an immune response.
Right.
Subcutaneous fluids. Why do we not want to give subcutaneous fluids? Well, that's because administering fluids under the skin can cause bleeding, and the tendency to bleed is already increased due to being envenomated, especially because venom tends to have an anticoagulant effect. It's uh, blowing up your blood cells. It's hemolyzing your blood cells. It's going to make you a little bit anemic. You don't want to give any human medications. I already kind of touched on home remedies.
Yeah.
There's nothing that home remedies are going to do. So your vet is probably going to say, here's our treatment plan. You're going to want to go through that treatment plan and make sure they're not including any of those. A, because they're contraindicated. B, they can cause harm. And C, because they're just not needed. You're paying for something that won't help, that could make it worse, and you're already going to have a high bill anyways. So cross out the stuff that you don't need, which is also why I advocate bringing these or keeping these NSS guides and documents um, in your kit. So if you do have a bite, you have it on your person. You can bring it to your vet, just in case your vet is not well versed. If you're out in the bush, the closest vet you might find is like a little country vet somewhere, and maybe they've never treated a snake bite, or they've only treated a few, and they still might have antivenom, but you might need to give them some confidence or courage and say, I know you can do this. Here's some guides on what to do.
It's not the time to be a wallflower. It's not the time.
Correct. Yeah.
Right, right. You don't want to act like you just
You,
got out of medical school, but say, I have
right.
sound information here, and please help me with this. Yeah,
Yes, you have to advocate for your dog.
yeah.
Um, I'm not trying to say go in and say you know more about your vet, but the information I'm sharing with you today is the most up-to-date best practices, evidence-based for treating a snake bite. And almost every veterinary emergency clinic does follow these because they treat a lot of snake bites, especially if they're in the South.
Right.
So now let's talk about risks of antivenom because there are risks. You can have adverse events or a reaction to antivenom, and they can be as simple as a what's called type 1 hypersensitivity, which is where you might get like a skin rash, hives, um, their respiratory rate or their breathing rate might be slightly increased,
And this is
or you can.
post-treatment. This is post-treatment.
Well, typically it happens within minutes or
Oh,
even, yeah, typically happens within minutes of administering antivenom.
gotcha.
So the vet will start to administer the antivenom very slowly and make sure that the dog isn't having a reaction. But if they do have a reaction, it's going to happen right away. Reactions are treatable. A lot of times what'll happen is the vet will see your dog starting to have a reaction, so they're going to slow or stop the administration. They might give it some Benadryl or diphenhydramine. They might give it a steroid, or they might give it epinephrine. Epinephrine is recommended over the other two because it's more effective and faster acting. This is the one time when it would be acceptable to give Benadryl and a steroid at for just one time. Although I still do
And this
recommend
is
not giving
for the
steroids.
reaction the dog's having, not, yeah,
Correct.
right.
Yes. So a lot of vets will try to get the reaction controlled and then they'll resume administration of the antivenom even slower than they did before
Wow.
because they want to get the antivenom in the dog. It's the only thing that will neutralize the venom. And in many cases, the dog can receive some intervention to the reaction and then successfully receive the rest of the antivenom. Um, but in a worst case scenario, a dog can have a very bad reaction to the antivenom. And that's still a type 1 hypersensitivity reaction, but now it has progressed into what we call anaphylaxis.
Yeah.
So uh, let me pull up something here.
Yeah.
Um, in anaphylaxis, you can see gastrointestinal effects. The dog's blood pressure is going to drop right away. If they do an ultrasound, they might see a halo around the gallbladder. Anaphylaxis becomes a more serious event for the dog because now they're having a very serious reaction. Vets generally know how to respond to anaphylaxis, so they're going to give it epinephrine. Um, and if vets are really experienced at treating snake bites, they're going to try to control the anaphylaxis and then continue with the envenomation.
It sounds like a juggling contest
It
almost.
is.
Yeah.
I generally don't Well, if someone calls us and says we're having anaphylaxis, help, what do I do? I'll provide the advice, generally with the recommendation to not continue um, administration because it is really risky now.
Yeah.
However, there are some veterinarians out there that are really, really good at this, and they've done this a lot, and they um, have protocols that work for them, and they will continue trying to give antivenom after they've got the anaphylaxis under control. And in some cases, they are successful. But some dogs can go into very serious anaphylaxis. Um, and if they have a severe envenomation, it can be compounded by each other. And then sometimes dogs will actually die from it too.
Wow.
So that's why that's very, very rare. And in most cases, anaphylaxis and even mild reactions are treatable, which is why vets don't care. They would rather get the antivenom in there and then treat it if they have to, but it's typically pretty treatable. Another reaction you can have to antivenom is called delayed type hypersensitivity, aka serum sickness, and it's something that sets in a couple weeks after you've received a serum-based product or a product that contains antigens from another species of animal. And in serum sickness, the dog might be acting lethargic and might have a lack of appetite. Serum sickness is caused by immune complexes formed by antibodies of your dog that are reacting with foreign proteins from the antivenom. And they might have joint pain. They might have some GI effects. They might be vomiting. And if you're seeing something like that happen in your dog a few weeks after it's been bit and received antivenom, take it into the vet. Some vets know what serum sickness is, some don't have any experience with it because it is very rare, but it can happen in very rare instances. Again, serum sickness is easily treatable. They're going to give it Benadryl, aka diphenhydramine. They're going to give it a steroid and with some probably a tapering dose of steroid, and then within a week or so, you'll have that under control. It's not life-threatening unless it's misdiagnosed for whatever reason or you just ignore it.
So that sounds like that case could be you were on a trip, you got treatment, but then you went back to your local vet in your neighborhood who that might apply to, where, yeah.
It could. Some local vets know what serum sickness looks like and they can treat it. But I've also talked to vets who referred it to a different clinic to treat. So it's really going to depend on the
Re-
experiences your local vets had and what they're comfortable with doing and not doing. One of the last things I want to talk about was prevention. And it's called snake aversion training. And I think it would do all your listeners really well, especially if they're hunting in territory where there are a lot of venomous snakes, which
Right.
is pretty much anywhere like Missouri or Indiana, southern Missouri, Indiana, or even central and kind of south of there, Colorado, etc. Um, so snake aversion training is where dogs are taught to identify a snake and say, hey, that could be really harmful to me. I'm just going to avoid it and ignore it and stay away from it. But if you find a snake aversion trainer, you need to make sure you're using a trainer who is using live snakes and preferably an actual rattlesnake or venomous snake. And what they'll do is they'll go out to their little course or they do the training and they're going to set the snake out and they're going to bring your dog within a safe distance of it and um, start with some kind of negative reinforcement on what happens when you get too close to that snake. And so at the end of the training, and I have no experience with it myself because I don't really need to. We don't. It's not a huge problem here in Iowa, but snake aversion training isn't 100%, but it's one of the best things you can do to avoid a bite. It's not going to avoid the really unfortunate bites where you're just running along, living your
Right.
best life, and a snake reaches out from under a bush and tags you. It's like, well, I didn't see it there, and I never would have seen that coming.
Right.
It is going to avoid the bites where your dog walks up to a snake and says, "Well, hello there,
Right.
let's play."
Yeah. Which I would think is probably more the case than anything. I would think that the dog,
Yeah, I mean,
their sense of
dogs love
smell
the
is
dog.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
I would, I would guess, and I've seen a lot of dogs over the years. I judged a lot of dogs in the field, and there are dogs who I want to say that they're always on the move, and when they smell a bird, it's stopped, right? It's stopped. Or if it's a flushing dog, it's a lot of go, and then boom, the bird comes up. There are a
yeah.
lot of dogs, and I've owned a couple of them, who we call mousers. Even in the middle of a hunt, they get interested in a mouse or a chipmunk that's a dog that would definitely probably nose around a snake a little bit because something caught his attention. He either wasn't very focused on what he was hunting, or he's got a habit of, I would almost call him a trash. They call him in a coon dog world, they call it trash breaking, right? There's some dogs that are a little trashy. They'll
Okay.
they are. I mean, there's dogs.
Mhm.
I'll leave the breeds off because it happens among all of them. I've seen dogs that will stop and hit a cow patty, like a fresh cow patty. Like,
Mhm.
no reason in the world a dog should stop bird hunting to lounge into a fresh cow patty, but there are dogs that will do that, and dogs that will all of a sudden smell where a chipmunk ran into a tree and spend a ridiculous amount of time. I mean, yeah, I could see the snake avoidance. I haven't done it either, but I have been in areas where I'm sure they're prevalent. I'm usually there in cooler weather, but September this year was not cool anywhere. And yeah,
There,
that's got to go on the list.
we are still seeing tons of snake bites happening right now. Typically, eh, well, let me preface this statement with saying a good indicator of when snake bites are starting to subside is when your antivenom sales start to slow down. And typically that starts to happen, and antivenom sales are not slowing down. They are maintaining. It's
Wow.
been a really warm fall.
Yeah.
There's still snake bites out there. Even on the National Snakebite, let me say it again, National Snakebite Support Facebook group, there's still tons of commenters and posts coming in saying, "Help, what do I do? My dog's been bit."
Right.
So it's been a really active year for snake bites.
Yeah, it's been ridiculously warm. I mean, just ridiculously warm for especially the prairies, you know.
And I'm not complaining because I love warm. Um, Especially because I live in the Midwest, so we only get warm
Right.
like half the year.
We get a warm October. We're still happy. Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. It's great.
Yeah.
Before I forget, I do want to share with you some resources that will be profoundly useful for your listeners. And the first one is the National Snakebite Support Group's website, which is nationalsnakebitesupport.org. And I can email these to you too.
Please do.
Um, and National Snakebite Support also has a Facebook group. So they have a Facebook page, but they also have a Facebook group that you can go join, and you can see questions that people ask, and you can see the answers that the experts are, you know, the kind of responses they're getting. All of the information I've provided today is the same information we provide. It's the same information on National Snakebite Support
Right. Right.
because it's the latest and the greatest. It's evidence-based. It's reliable. Our website, mgbiologics.com, has information on it. If you go to our Rattler page, at least to learn about antivenom. And then the veterinary snakebite911.com is an antivenom locator. And then people can always call MG at our 800 number, which is posted on our website, but I can email that to you too.
Okay, I'll put that all into. I don't usually
Yeah.
have a lot of show notes because it's a
Mhm.
conversation about a bird trip, but anything you
Sure. Yeah.
forward back to me, I will put in the show notes.
Yeah. I mean, they can even call me if they have a question, or they can email our tech support line, which goes to me. I can put that information in there too. We do have expert or veterinary snakebite treatment experts that um, I've put people in touch with before. Sometimes vets will call me and say, "Hey, we're having a real stinker of a case here. We need
Hmm.
help." I'll say, let me get you with some of our snake bite experts. And these are guys that have treated a lot of snake bites. They're credible. Um, they know all the do's and don'ts, and they do their craft really, really well. Before I forget, I also want to go over how antivenom is made
Yeah,
because I
please.
mentioned
Because
earlier we forgot. So
if I was going to guess, it it starts with the snake venom, but maybe it doesn't. I don't
it
know.
does. It
Okay.
does. So some poor sucker is out there somewhere milking snakes, where they're
Oh,
taking venomous snakes and um, they're they kind of force open their mouth and press their fangs against the jar, and then they squeeze their venom glands on the side of their head, and it just expresses, it spits out a ton of venom from the snake, and they'll just keep doing that, getting all this venom. That venom gets lyophilized. And then we take the lyophilized venom and we immunize horses with that. We have a very large horse herd here in Iowa that we make our antivenom in. Now, our horses, not all the horses are making antivenom. Some of the horses are making other veterinary antibody products we make as well. But the horses are injected with very specific amounts of venom at specific intervals. And we then um, hook those horses up to plasmapheresis machines and we collect their blood plasma, which contains the antibodies. And the antivenom is just antibodies against snake toxins and snake venom, basically. And then we process their plasma into what becomes the antivenom that gets put into a bag and then it's distributed to veterinarians. So when your dog receives antivenom, it's actually receiving horse antibodies
huh.
because it's made in horses.
And is that just because of the size of the animal? It's easier to work with?
It is, yeah. Horses are big. They've got a lot of blood volume. They're easy to work with. Even for human antivenoms, Antivip and Crofab. Crofab is made in sheep, I believe, and Antivip is made in horses. So even if
Wow.
you receive a human antivenom, you're still receiving an antibody that's been made in a different animal.
Wow.
And those cost, around $6,000 a dose and up. And when a human is treated, it's pretty typical to just receive 4 doses right off the bat, and then they will continue dosing you until your envenomation stabilized. So it is not uncommon to get into six-figure treatments
Oh,
for a human snake bite
oh,
for the cost.
whew. That is that. My head's kind of spinning right now, Josh. I mean, like you kept it on a very understandable level. Um, but let me ask, and if something else pops up, I know you've got a kind of a chart and a path to follow. Um, if there was a best case scenario, a dog gets a bite, there's a reaction. He gets
Mhm.
to a clinic who's used to treating it. Is it gonna be follow up antivenoms or treatments, or could it be a snake bite and a treatment and off we go? Not to say hunt tomorrow, but is there a best case or is there always a bit of is there always more to it than we think there's going to be?
So best case would be you see the dog bit,
Right.
you take it to the vet, it's observed at the vet for at least 8 hours. They do the diagnostics. The dog never gets swelling. Um, the dog has no pathology that's evident on its
Okay.
blood test. So they say it looks like a dry bite. You're lucky.
Yeah.
The next best case, if your dog actually sustains a bite, is it sustains just a very mild bite. It maybe didn't receive a lot of venom. So um, vet does the testing. They give it antivenom. They keep the dog overnight. The next morning, the dog looks much better. Um, and they do some testing and say, hey, everything looks a lot better, so you're good to go home. So then you take your dog home the following day. And then maybe you go back within a couple days or a week to do follow up, just make sure everything's looking fine. That would be the best case.
Yeah.
There is an episode of Critter Fixers, and which is a TV show. I don't remember on which network, but there is um, and I can actually send you a link for that too. It's actually a pretty good episode, and it's not the entire episode. It's just this one part of the episode where a young woman and her dad come in and they bring their dog in who just got bit by a snake, and she's very distraught. And so I'm totally forgetting what the doctor's name is, but he's using our Rattler antivenom, and he whips out a bag of antivenom and he's saying what their treatment's going to be. And he's saying, we're going to get this antivenom in the dog, and if it does its job, the dog is going to get better real fast. So they kind of show all that, and then they kind of skip to the next day, and they go take a look at the dog, and the dog looks much better. His owners come and they're just overjoyed. His swelling has actually receded a little bit, and he's going to pull through, and of course the antivenom has helped. And so that I would call a best case scenario, and it's actually memorialized in an episode of Critter Fixers. So
Right.
anyone can go and watch that online somewhere and see exactly what is transpiring.
Well, Josh, so is this where the time factor comes in? Let's say, let's say you not that you would try to put it off till tomorrow, but I would say maybe I'm asking the question backwards. Could the worst case be the dog was bit and it took you an extended amount of time to get this treatment started? Is that where it's going to be a more complicated process for the owner?
That would definitely be worse.
Yeah.
Would I call it the worst case? I've seen so much bad stuff. I think the worst case is when you find the dog unresponsive laying in the field,
Holy cow.
because that has happened. And that's a really nasty bite. Um, I have one report that came in. They found the dog unresponsive in the yard. They took it in, gave it antivenom. That dog did die. They were unable to get it over that, but that would be worst case scenario. It just took a massive bite. Neurotoxic bites can be really bad because your nerves help control your muscles, which control your breathing. If
Right.
you're bit by a coral snake down south, maybe you're in Florida, um, there is not a veterinary antivenom in the US for coral snake bites in dogs. University of Florida is one of the only hospitals that is treating coral snake bites with an antivenom that they're importing from Costa Rica or
Wow.
some yeah, far down south. I don't remember the actual country, so don't hold me to that. Um, but they're the only hospital where you can actually get treatment for a coral snake. And um, if if you do get bit by a coral snake, your dog's probably going to require a ventilator as well because it's a neurotoxic. The dog might not be able to breathe on its own.
Right.
And if you have to go on a ventilator, then you're probably right at 15,000 bucks for your treatment, and up, depending on how many days it needs to be on the ventilator, because ventilators are pretty expensive to have to stay on. So
Imagine. Yeah. But I'm sure it's like you said, if they have seen it, they have done it, and it happens. It just doesn't, it's just
yeah,
not.
yeah,
I mean, and I would say probably for the listeners to hunting podcasts like my own, that's probably going to be the one off. That's just you have to
correct.
be real unlucky for that to happen. But I would say that is probably something that residents of Florida fear a lot more than I would
Yeah.
almost say Florida is not a destination wing shooting state.
Okay.
There's quail there, northern Florida, but that's more of a training and a preserve place. And there's some places where you can hunt some wild quail in Florida. But I would bet the bulk of my listeners are in the South and that the Western states where you would see more rattlers. But
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm ruling that one off. I'm ruling that one.
Yeah.
The coral snake.
Coral coral bites are very rare.
Yeah.
And coral snakes, they're pretty timid and they just kind of like to mind their own business. So it's
It almost have to be a provoked, almost like a cat playing with a mouse thing almost. It's like,
yeah, exactly. Which is what cats like to do with snakes too. Cats are actually really fast, believe it or not. And um, but a lot of times cat bites are on the paw, which
right,
is the most cat thing ever, trying to
right.
bat.
Now you
So
mentioned early on, Josh, for horses, dogs, and cats. Is
yeah,
now I'm asking this just because I think I heard this somewhere, which I want to maybe dispel a rumor. What about the cattle that live out on the prairie, like out on these big ranches? Are cattle uh, uh, is they are they immune to it or are they
they're
not?
not. So what it means when I say
Horses, dogs,
cats,
cat, yeah,
cats, dogs, and horses is it means that we, as a USDA licensed manufacturer, have made this product. We've got it USA license. We've taken it through safety studies in those three species, horses, dogs, and cats,
okay,
to be able to get a claim for that on our label. And we've done the associated studies. Um, we've not done the safety studies in cattle or other species or whatnot. But the reality is a veterinarian is probably going to use it off label in those cases. And if they call us, then, legally we can say, well, this is an off label use. We can't advise on it, but
right,
veterinarians use antivenoms off label in many different species just because you have to. What else can you use?
right,
So,
right. Is there any
um,
other? Does this translate to anything in the ins? I know this is another. I don't want to say softball question, just because talking about poisonous versus venomous and the histamine, like from a bee sting. Is there are there insects out there like the scorpion that would be more like a venomous thing, or is that still an insect histamine? Do you know?
I don't do any work with that. So
Okay.
I've got friends that are experts in that, but that person is not me. So I
Okay.
don't know.
Okay.
When people start talking about scorpions, I'm like,
Yeah.
it's boring. Care. I'm interested in talking about snakes.
Right. Right.
They're just little bugs, basically, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I see
Um,
eat bees, and it doesn't seem to have any adverse reaction to them. So,
well, it's ironic you say that because I do actually have a sensitivity to bee and wasp venom now because I was digging. digging some sod up underneath a fence I was installing one time, and unbeknownst to me, dug into a ground hornet nest, and they got me really, really good on my legs. I've been stung many times before that, but in that particular instance, even though I've stung on the foot and the leg, I had a rash on my face and my armpits, and I was kind of itching, and I'm like, these are very far away from my leg where I should be having local effects. So I was having a systemic reaction. So that was telling me I was having some kind of mild type 1 hypersensitivity. I went to the allergist and they tested me against all 5 venoms. And what they do is um, they'll give you a little intradermal injection and at the lowest concentration. And if you don't have a skin reaction, they'll increase it. And they had to go to the highest concentration before I finally reacted, and that was against all 5 venoms.
Wow.
So what that told me was I'm not very allergic, and I still got the shots for the next 5 years, which is a ton of shots, and I have an EpiPen. Uh,
In your pocket.
yeah, theoretically,
Theoretically,
uh,
yeah.
I've got the prescription for it, but I'm like, I'm probably not that bad, especially now, but I've also never been stung again, so I've never got around to finding out, and frankly, I hope I don't have to.
Josh, I'm sure I got two questions that people would ask in their head or at the tailgate when we're talking after a hunt. One of them is if the dog has been treated now with let's say successful, that best case scenario, we got the bite, we identified it, the vet took care of it, it looks better the next day, blood work's coming back, we have a successful case. Is that dog still susceptible to another snake bite? And
Yeah, yeah.
second part of that, I've heard that there's vaccines that you can give preventatively for that.
Oh,
Now, we
yes.
haven't covered that. I don't know.
Yeah. The, the
Would you
vaccine.
would you
Let's
rather
let's
take the Fifth Amendment on that?
let's put a pin in the vaccine for a second, but I know that's going to be a huge question with you guys. So
Yeah,
you do not get immunity from a snake bite, um, and if you do, it's certainly not long lived. Keep in mind, to have immunity to venom, you need to have circulating antibodies. But what happens a lot in our immune system is we'll have circulating antibodies to something right after the exposure, but eventually we develop what's called immunologic memory.
right.
And so we have memory B cells, which are trained to recognize targets we've seen before, and they can instantly start secreting antibody as soon as they come across an old friend that they've met. And it's not actually an old friend, it's a pathogen to your body. The difference with memory is an immediate recall, whereas the first time you're exposed to something, it takes you a couple of weeks to mount an immune response to it.
Yeah,
Um, but the problem is, if let's say you had memory immunity to snake venom, it's still going to take a couple of days to start secreting those antibodies. Well, you don't have a couple of days; you need the antibodies now,
right.
and that's actually a great segue into the vaccine, which I can talk about in a little bit. Um, there's something that's very important I want to make sure I do cover, and that is the timing of when to receive antivenom post snake bite. So it's most effective if you can receive it within 4 hours after a snake bite. It goes back to what I said earlier, time is tissue.
Yeah, yeah,
So the sooner you receive it, the less tissue damage you're having from the venom. But where this gets really important is there is this belief out there among veterinarians, some of them, not all of them, that people will call me or they'll post on the National Snakebite Support Group and they'll say, took my dog to the vet. They said it's been over 6 hours, so it's too late to give antivenom. Give the freaking antivenom. If that dog is having signs of envenomation, it's not too late. it might not be as effective, but it's still going to do something. So even if it's the next day or even 48 hours later, 2 days later, your dog still has signs of envenomation, give give the antivenom. It's not too late. It's not as effective as it would be if it was 6 hours post,
Right.
but I can say the longest I've personally witnessed antivenom still being effective in a bitten dog was 6 days post bite.
Wow.
So the dog did receive, this was a very old dog, was 17 years old. It did receive antivenom right away, and they thought they had it treated. They took the dog, the dog was released, the owner took it home. And then I started getting messages from the owner who reached out to me and said, "Hey, my dog's urine is pretty bloody, and she's still not acting very good, and it's like your dog has hemolytic anemia. That's from active venom that's hasn't been completely neutralized. So your dog probably needs a blood transfusion and it needs to get back into the vet. And by this time, the dog is doing very badly. So it goes back to the vet. Uh, the dog has severe anemia because the venom's just chewing through the blood cells, and so they give it a blood transfusion. And this is on day 5 post bite. On day 6, the hospital receives more antivenom, so they give it the antivenom. That was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I receive a video of that dog at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. She's literally running around the living room, barking at people outside the window.
Oh,
And just 2 days before that, she was almost on death's doorstep. So the important thing there is yeah, if you get a blood transfusion, it's almost like peeing in the wind if you've still got active venom because the venom's just going to chew through the next stuff too. So you want to make sure you get more antivenom in there
right.
to neutralize the venom. And that's kind of the 1-2 punch. It's like the knockout punch. If they do receive a blood transfusion and more antivenom, um, because new blood can be like new life for a dog that's doing really badly. And then antivenom takes out the rest of the venom, causing that issue.
Wow.
And that dog recovered very quickly, but it most certainly would have died without that. So the take home point in all of this is if one of your listeners has a dog that's bit, they go to the vet, and even if it's within the same day or even the next day of that bite, and the vet says it's too late for antivenom, it's not. And
Okay.
they can call us as a manufacturer and say, is it too late? And I'm going to say absolutely not. If you still have signs of clinical envenomation or clinical signs of envenomation, you still have active venom in that dog and it needs to be neutralized.
Yeah. Wow.
So let's talk about the rattlesnake vaccine. So um, as as a company, I'm not necessarily, I'm not going to want to talk bad about other good, bad, or indifferent about other companies. As a scientist, I will still look at what the literature says and the peer-reviewed literature. And so what I'll just tell you, I can tell you the recommendations of others, and you can take it as you will.
Yeah.
So the AHA, which is the American Animal Hospital Association, does not recommend the vaccine um, because there's been no studies actually documenting its efficacy in a dog in an actual like challenge model or something like that. There have been studies where they've looked at envenomated vaccinated dogs and envenomated non-vaccinated dogs, and they found no difference between the two groups. Um, I've got some personal opinions on maybe there could be some possible biases in that paper, but I haven't read it close enough to, make those opinions publicly because it's not a well-informed opinion at this point. So I won't say it. And then the National Snakebite Support Group, they do not recommend the rattlesnake vaccine based on the recommendations of AHA. And existing literature or evidence that exists. There are doctors out there, anecdotally, that believe it works, and they swear by it. They feel that, dogs that come in do a little better. Now, the rattlesnake vaccine is not going to make it so your dog receives a bite and it's hunky dory, everything's fine. It's what it's supposed to do is basically buy you time,
Mhm.
so you've got a little bit of neutralizing antibodies in the dog already, which is going to buy us time to get to the hospital until it gets antivenom. But if you go back to what I said about immunological memory, an immune response to snake venom is only good if you have circulating antibodies to the venom. And this is where something called duration of immunity comes into place. If the venom vaccine has a relatively short duration of immunity, and I don't know what that is for the venom vaccine, for the rattlesnake vaccine, but let's say the duration of immunity is 3 months, where it means that you're going to be actively secreting antibodies for 3 months, and then afterwards you go into memory. You still have immunity to venom theoretically, but when you're bit by a snake, it's going to take several days to recall that immune response, and you
Right.
don't have several days to spare. So, there is one paper, granted, it only used 2 dogs, and those dogs, they were vaccinated dogs, and they had um, an anaphylactic event upon being bitten again, exposure to venom. So there is a risk that it could actually sensitize dogs to venom if they ever are bit. Granted, that was only based on 2 dogs.
Right.
So I really don't know how significant that is.
Right.
Um, so that is the good, the bad, and the in between. There's a lot of literature out there. Um, at least all the literature I can find does not actually recommend it because there was no benefit. Anecdotally, some vets do recommend it. Um, so I'm just,
Well, I mean,
I'm,
that could go down to the just a personal decision of the dog owner then. If it,
yeah,
I don't want to call it a placebo, but if it makes you feel a little bit better about it, that's great. But don't just think your dog can get snake bit and go like,
right,
I got the flu vaccine. Of course I couldn't catch another strain of the flu. It's
right, yeah,
yeah, the treatment sounds like the course, not, to me too.
yeah, yeah,
Well, my head is spinning, Josh, but like I said, I think I think we've covered everything that I could think of. Other than, you covered the types of snakes, what their venoms do, conflicting opinions, resources on hand. I mean, I don't know other than if people should probably listen to this twice because you tend to listen like my dad used to. You could see his lips moving, wanting to ask a question, which means he
hmm
stopped listening. So I'm going to suggest to people to
yeah,
listen to this episode twice and make those notes. And I did not know that there was a literally an 800 number and something that you could literally keep in your armrest of your car or in your dog's first aid kit. That could be your first line. Uh,
yeah,
that clinic could be 100 miles in one direction and you were going to have to go 100 miles, and that alone could save your dog. Just
hmm
knowing which way to go to get that vaccine.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get the antivenom.
Yes, to get the antivenom. To get the
Yeah. Um, so I did cover a ton of information today. I had it all kind of arranged in a outline like we talked about in the pre-call.
yeah,
I didn't want to sound too formulaic going through everything, but there's just so much stuff to talk about. I want to make sure I didn't forget to cover anything either.
yeah,
So I've kind of covered the top 40, if you will. I don't actually know if it's 40 or not, but I'm just using the saying of these are the most important parts to know about snake bites, a little bit of background to it, and what you should do and should not do. Every
right.
chance I have to dispel, the myths and the don't cut and suck and tourniquet and all that stuff, I will gladly take it because it's infuriating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I said, we said earlier, this isn't a John Wayne movie where
No,
we cut an X and we suck out the poison. So both of you are poisoned at that point.
yeah,
And I don't know if this is, I think you kind of talked about it on the, uh, what did you call the parts of the body that are fattier, or what did you call that?
yeah. There's more tissue, more muscle and whatnot.
Right.
Kind of softer areas with a lot more muscle tissue on them.
So venom, when it goes into let's say the leg of a dog, let's just for that.
Mhm.
When you go to the vet and your vet takes a blood sample, venom doesn't matter if it goes into your skin or your vessels. It
Right.
doesn't rely on blood flow. So if it was hit in a vein as opposed to a muscle, it's all the same to the snake's venom, is it? Is that true?
Basically, if it were to hit a vein, now it has the opportunity to go systemic,
Oh, okay.
and that's really bad
Hmm.
because you're getting the venom everywhere.
Wow.
Um, but in most cases, you'll see you'll just have the venom be locally deposited within the tissue somewhere.
Right, right. It'd be rare to hit. In fact, it
Yeah.
would almost be worse luck than getting the snake bite is getting the snake bite in the. I know there's a friend of mine in the industry. He had the story of his dog took one in the ear, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of people do know in our world there's a lot of blood flow in the ear. Like when we get a little nick
Hmm.
on the ear from barbed wire,
Yeah.
it's a real dickens to stop the bleeding. Um, and again, but I've seen dogs when you talked about looking for the wound. Now, obviously, let's say a German Shorthair or a Weimaraner or a Vizsla, very short fur, probably easy to notice, you know,
Yes.
marks. Then you get like a wire-haired pointing Griffon that looks like a sheep, and you that's not going to serve you very well if now you're waiting for the dog to show symptoms. So,
Right.
but I would almost say those run-by bites. I don't. It's not anybody's fault, but when you see the dog stopping, nosing around, and then that happened, there's don't use hope's not a strategy in this case.
Right. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
isn't hope is not a strategy. Just
No.
just go to the vet and say, help me look for the snake bite. It may not have happened, but
Mhm.
you want to make sure of that.
And even if they can't look for the snake bite, they should still do
The blood work.
some of the blood work. And again, that all the recommended blood work is on the National Snakebite Support website. There's even an entire veterinary treatment algorithm on the website that says step one, do this, if this, then do this,
Right.
that will take a veterinarian completely
Through it.
through what to do. Yeah, especially if they've never done it before.
Josh, do you know how you've been doing this for 21 years? Has this been something that's been on, is this, is this old technology or is it always is it always improving or has this been around since people never even knew it was around?
Antivenom
Antivenom.
or
Yeah.
yeah. So I haven't necessarily been doing antivenom for
Oh,
21 years,
right.
but that's beside the point. Antivenom is an extremely old technology.
Okay.
Um, it's been around um, at least since the 40s or 50s, I believe,
Okay.
and maybe even before that. It's come a long ways in how we produce it
Okay.
since the 40s and 50s.
Right.
Um, I wouldn't want any of that stuff in me. Well, I wouldn't want any of that stuff in me, but the way it's produced now is very clean. We use human grade equipment to collect the blood from the horses.
Right.
Everything is depyrogenated, so there's no pyrogens or endotoxins in there. Um, We do sterility testing on all of it, so it's known to be sterile. There's not going to be any, bacterial contamination that'll get you sick. And then we do potency testing too on every single cereal, which is basically a test that we perform to confirm that every batch of antivenom has the correct amount of venom neutralizing capacity.
Right.
So we know everything works like it should when it goes out the door. So and then of course we're inspected by USDA and there's certain rules and regulations we have to meet there. So there's a lot that goes into it even for a dog, and the concept itself is not new. It's been around for a very long time. The way we make it and the technology we use to make it has definitely come a long ways. So it's a much, much safer product than it ever used to be.
And I know you said this was technology that's um, being studied, but if you wouldn't mind mentioning, like, could there be that magic pill someday? Like you sounded like they're working on an oral for that.
It can
Or
be given in all kinds of different modes. The patent for them basically covers topical or oral or
okay,
injectable or whatnot. But um, I know University of Florida has published a study looking at the effects of verasplidib, I believe it was, in dogs envenomated by coral snakes, and it's it makes a huge difference in the recovery and the treatment prognosis. They're doing a lot better. So there's studies being done. I personally don't I see it more as a matter of not if but when. So
I,
I think in the future we will have more tools in
in the
our
tool.
toolbox to
Yeah,
to treat envenomations. It's not a replacement for antivenom. It is a supplement to help um, treat, what am I trying to say here? To attack the venom and help treat the effects of envenomation.
right, right. So it sounds like first line of defense is get your damn dog to a qualified, certified snake bite, snake avoidance. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah.
and you also mentioned a number, and I don't want to try to scare anybody here, um, but and this goes from obviously from pet dogs to hunting dogs to
Mhm.
tell me the approximate number of snake bites in a year that
So it's believed, estimated, I don't know how accurate the number is, but anywhere from 100,000 to 150,000
that's a lot.
bites a year.
That's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's a lot. And I can believe it too, just based
Production,
on if you're
probably.
if you're on the NSS snakebite page, there's constantly bites coming in there.
Wow.
If you're, well, I mean, I know how many doses we're selling,
Right.
and there's a lot there too. So it's I can say the most common bite is going to be copperhead. It's
Is that because it's the most common snake and distribution wise, or is it
that's what I think. There a lot of rattlesnakes are kind of regional for that specific rattlesnake, but copperheads they're
yeah.
just kind of everywhere. So you see a
And the
majority is copperhead bites.
right. I know in Virginia where I have a place and spent some time, we always heard about copperheads a lot, you know.
Mhm.
And I didn't even know that was, I mean, I knew it was like, ooh, copperhead, but I did not realize it's basically a rattlesnake without without a rattle. I did. It's
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And the water moccasin, again, that's this another version of a snake without a rattle, give you a warning.
Mhm.
And I've always heard that they're more aggressive, but maybe it's not true, but I've always heard that the water you always hear the fishermen and the duck hunters
Sure.
talk about the water moccasins and
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I don't think any snake is actually inherently aggressive. Um, because a snake does not want to attack you. It knows you're way bigger than it, and it knows you're not its prey. But snakes are defensive,
Right,
and sometimes a snake is trying to run away, and in the process of running away, it's actually like running right towards you.
right,
Um,
right,
and people will interpret that to be like, oh, that snake like came at me and attacked me. Well, no, they don't want to do that. It's trying to get away. When they strike, they can strike about half to two-thirds of their body's distance.
right.
Um, but chances are they just want to get out of there. They're gonna be left alone.
Well, I'm going to
There's
start wearing chaps from now on. I'm telling you, when I'm anywhere, I have not been, or I should say, gaiters. They do make those snake
yeah.
chaps. I would even imagine that a good Cordura gaiter, just to keep the moisture off you, would have to help a little bit for at least for us.
Yeah, and there's snake boots too you can wear too, which are I don't have any experience with them, but they're I don't know if some kind of like thicker leather or something, just like a snake can't basically bite through it.
Right.
Um, and that'd be good um, for hunters out
Yeah.
in snake territory.
If I lived there, I'd be wearing them. Well,
Yeah.
say 365. And I know you're not a what is a snake biologist? Is that a herpetologist? People who work with snakes?
Yep. Yep.
So
Herpetologist.
you're not going to be able to give us the temperature, the secret temperature of when snakes are dormant. We just want to know what to do when it happens, if it happens.
Right. Yep. Yep. Um, I was on a herping expedition a couple of weeks ago and near Denver, Colorado, and I was out with some field biologists and herpetologists, and they said, Lizer, you're gonna find and hook your first prairie rattler snake. Of course, they call it Crotalus viridis. So that day we saw some little hognose snakes, which is cool. We found a yellow-bellied green racer. We found a milk snake, which looks a lot like a coral snake. And we did actually find four prairie rattlers, and that was pretty cool. So I did hook my first two snakes, which is basically where you use a snake hook and you reach out and pick them up. And people are like, why do you have no common sense? Why are you doing this? And it's like, well, I mean, I make antivenom. I do venom research. It's interesting to me. I want to learn about snake biology and behavior.
Yeah.
So these I think it just helps me be more well-rounded, and I always have an intellectual curiosity about wanting to just always be learning stuff. So it was a complete adrenaline rush. It was amazing to be moving and holding something so dangerous just with a stick. And of course we weren't antagonizing them and we weren't trying to harm them or anything. I was just trying to learn. And there were professionals there showing
Right.
me what to do. It was crazy.
Now,
It was awesome.
this is probably just the I promise my last silly question. We probably should wrap this up anyway, but um, I would imagine your company, MG Biologics, you must have a lot of snakes, right? I mean,
We
where
don't.
you don't.
We get our venom, or we buy the venom already from.
So there's somebody else out
Yeah,
there that milks snakes for you.
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
there's places that are basically venom banks, if you will, and they've got tons and tons of snakes, and they're milking them and lyophilizing them, and they're selling it for research and antivenom production and all kinds of stuff.
Hmm.
So we don't actually have to touch snakes.
Oh, so you like
I never,
when you get a new job, low man on a totem pole doesn't go out and back and start milking. Okay.
right. Yeah.
So anybody looking for a career with M&G Biologics, that's not your internship.
Yeah. We all have five fingers on each hand. So yeah, no milking snakes here.
Okay. Well, John, I like what you said. They called you Lizer, Lizer.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
if you go, I've got friends that go by their last name, but Josh, I
Yeah.
want to appreciate. I can't appreciate how much, and I want to thank Mark Stinson for putting us together. Mark's a longtime listener, and I think he wanted me to get this episode out as much as I wanted to, and
Okay.
I'm glad he did the hoof work, and I'm glad. I'm just very appreciative of the information we had today, and I won't put this out until you get time to send me those websites, those links, and I will get those show notes on the thing because I like again, show notes don't normally apply to what I'm, talking
Mhm.
about a hunt
Sure.
or a certain bird species or anything other than, a habitat organization. So
Yeah.
I will wait to get that from you, Josh, and then we'll put this episode up in the next day or two. And but I can't thank you enough for enlightening us on what to do if this happens.
Well, thanks for having me and allowing me to do my preaching on some of these things.
It's
I've never
important.
done one of these before, so it's really fun. So thanks for having me again.
I wouldn't get surprised if you start getting some more calls.
Okay. Well, I love talking about it, so
All right, Josh.
don't tempt me with a good time.
All right, sounds good. Thank you again so much.
Yep. Bye-bye.